picking the wrong niche is the #1 reason that cold email agencies die in year 1. Every agency owner asks the same question: what niche should I go after? And almost everyone gets it wrong. Pick right and every case study, every referral, every reply compounds. Now pick wrong and you're rebuilding your list, your copy, your offer every 90 days. And I say this because this literally was me a couple months ago. Now I run cold email campaigns across various different niches, so I see what actually works and what just looks good on paper. Now in this video, I'm going to show you the exact framework that I use to actually pick a niche in 2026. I'm also going to show you the 3 mistakes that agencies typically make before they land their first client. All right, now let's get into the video. All right, so before we can actually pick our niche, we have to discuss what actually makes a niche good for cold email. So there's going to be 5 main components. You're going to have your TAM size, pain, email deliverability, data availability, and competition. So I'm going to individually break every single one of these down for you. Now starting with our TAM. So your TAM is going to be your total addressable market. You want to make sure that the niche that you're reaching out to has the volume in that market for you to even scale. So for example, we'll say this is like a pond and we'll say that there are fish in this pond. Don't mind my fish, these are terrible. I think actually, let me do it like this. That looks a little better. All right, so look, these are fish in, yeah, no, I can't. So we'll call these fish, right? We'll call these fish. We have one of our ponds right here, and we have another pond. We'll call all those fish, right? So we have this pond and we have this pond. Now, which one of these ponds do you feel like you're most likely going to catch a fish? The pond right here with 4 fishes, or the pond right here that has multiple fishes? That's exactly how you should look at your total addressable market, right? You want to pick an industry where there is enough volume for you to actually scale. If you pick something where the volume is super low, you're not going to be able to actually outreach. You're not going to be able to scale volume. So this is the first thing that you want to focus on, right? Can this industry actually scale? Now, next on the list is going to be pain. This is going to be super important. What type of pain, what type of problem is the prospect dealing with? Is this something that they actually need, or is this something that would just be nice to have? For example, we'll take a staffing and recruiting firm. A staffing and recruiting firm literally needs to be in contact with hiring managers so that they can place their job. If not, they make no money. For example, if you reached out to maybe an e-com brand who already has marketing in place and you try to sell them marketing, they are not going to need it as bad as a staffing firm who literally needs to place jobs, right? Who relies on only referrals, only outbound. So that's why it's very important that you understand your prospect's pain, and not only understand the pain, but how you can actually come in and bring them the solution. And we really want to make sure this is something that they actually need versus something that would just be nice to have. Now, next is going to be email deliverability. This is super huge. And I'm not talking about just like email deliverability as far as like setting up your domains and your infrastructure. Of course, that's super important, but certain industries have tighter spam filters than others. For example, you want to stay away from anything that has to do with like the government or anything like that. The chances that you get in contact with a government position or any type of industry that has to do with a government role is going to be almost impossible to get in contact with. Now, same thing goes for healthcare. Healthcare is super strict when it comes to spam filters. The possibility of getting in contact with someone in the healthcare industry is super low as well. So you want to make sure, right, obviously, that you're able to actually get in contact with this person, because nothing matters if you can't get in contact with them and if your emails are just going to spam anyways. Now, next is going to be the data, right? Can you actually find the data? Can you find these people, right? Whether that's AIArc, whether that's Apollo, Apify, there's so many different scrapers. There's Google scrapers, LinkedIn scrapers, but can you actually find the data, right? Can you actually find these people? Believe it or not, some industries are so much harder to find and to locate than others, right? I could go into AIArc right now and go into industry and look up staffing and recruiting, right? It's already a listed industry. It's going to give me a bunch of staffing and recruiting firms. Now, the same might not be, for example, I actually had a prospect reach out to me who wanted to be connected with doctors, right? Who had just graduated. The chances of getting in contact with someone like that is going to be so much less. There's barely any data there, right? The list that I can build with that is not as much as to what I could build with let's say for a staffing and recruiting firm. Now, we also have to look at the competition, right? The comp. Now, obviously this is hit or miss, right? Because where there's competition, right, it's obviously a verified field, right? If there's competition there, there's money there as well. But you want to be careful as to, you want the right balance. We don't want to be sending to someone who's getting hundreds of emails a day versus someone who's maybe getting 10. Obviously, there's still competition there. For example, let me break that down for you. For example, M&A advisory firm, right? Mergers and acquisitions. I reached out to someone yesterday, right? And he told me he gets around 10 emails a day. Mine stood out. He took the time. He responded, right? So competition of 10 people is doable. Let's think e-com brands. We have a UGC agency client that we're working with. E-com brands get around 100 cold emails every single day. So you want to find a middle ground. Sending to someone who's getting hundreds of emails a day is almost impossible to get a response. You have to be so different, and your email has to be so outside of the box because they're constantly getting sold to, they're constantly getting pitched, they're constantly getting cold emails. So you want to find a good balance with the competition, right? In between. Not too much competition, but you don't want too little competition either, right? You don't want a space where there's absolutely no one in, because most likely that's a red flag. If you can find a space that there's no one in, right, and it's actually a good valid space, and it marks off, right, it marks off all these here, right, and the competition's low, and the TAM is there, and the pain is there, and the deliverability and the data availability is there, and the competition is super low, that's a win-win. But the chances that you find something like that no one else has found, and the competition is essentially dry or dead, and it still marks off these boxes, is essentially 0 to none. So those are the main things that go into actually making a good offer, right? The TAM size. So we want to make sure that the addressable market is there. You're able to actually scale this industry up. You want to make sure the pain is there, so the prospect actually has a pain point, and it's not something that would just be nice for them to have, but something that they actually need. Now, email deliverability, obviously making sure that your emails are even going to go through to this prospect, right? You don't want to be wasting time, wasting money on your domains, and your emails are not even going through. Now, data availability, right? Can you actually scrape a list, right? Can you actually find the data on this type of prospect? And then of course, competition, right? How saturated is their inbox already? Like I said, you want to find that middle ground. Now, what you're going to want to do when you're first starting off is you don't want to just pick one offer and just go all in on that offer. You want to do a bunch of testing on a bunch of different offers. But of course, you want to make sure that the offers that you're testing mark all these boxes right here. Now, once you have all the boxes checked, you're going to send out to different niches, right? So essentially what you're doing is you're trying to get data, right? You're trying to see, okay, I'm trying to validate a niche. I'm not just going to go all in on one, even though it may mark all my boxes. I want to go in on multiple that mark all the boxes, right? So I can see, what am I getting the most success with? What is actually working? Once you find that, then that's when you double down, right? That's when you double down on that niche and you go all in on that one niche. Once you get a case study in that niche, then of course that's the niche that you just want to, double down on. But the thing is with cold email, right, with how much volume that you can send, it is a no-brainer to send to multiple niches, right? It doesn't cost you anything. If you look at a bunch of different cold email agencies, their portfolio is diverse. Us, for example, we're working with a UGC agency, a staffing and recruiting firm. So I'm not saying it's bad to work with multiple different niches. You just want to make sure that these niches actually hit all of these boxes. All right, now here are the 3 mistakes I see a lot of beginners making, and I used to make these myself. So number 1 is going to be picking something that's interesting. For a lot of people getting into the space, there's not really a niche that you have knowledge in, and maybe you do, but it's not something that's going to scale. For me, for example, right, I'm interested in fitness. I'm not going to go and cold email a gym. There's nothing I could do for them. Like a top gym, I can't get them results, right? So that kind of defeats the purpose of something you're interested in. You may be interested in it, but there's no money in it, or it's not even possible with cold email. Now, that goes into number 2, right, which is picking a niche that you can't build a list for, right? I kind of discussed and touched on this earlier. You don't want to pick something where you can't even go and scrape the clients for, right? Like you have no data to go off of, right? A lot of people end up picking a niche. Oh, I want to target this niche, but they can't build a list for it. It has to be something where you can actually scrape these people. These people have a social presence. They're online, whether that's LinkedIn. They're on these different platforms where you can actually do a scrape and get in contact with them. Because if you can't get in contact with them, it does you no good. Now, mistake number 3 is going to be abandoning the niche before it had a real test. Just like I told you previously, you want to do a test between different niches and see like what works, what doesn't work, right? So you can actually collect that data. Now, a lot of people, they'll send out one campaign and they don't get the outcome they're looking for. The niche isn't looking too strong and they just quit on it, right? You want to do multiple tests and you want to actually get as much data as you can, right? Let's say you do 3 campaigns and they're all bad, and okay, right? Maybe the niche isn't working. But if you just do 1 test, 2 tests, that's not enough for you to actually like test if the niche is a good niche, or you never know as well, right? It could be your deliverability, right? We got to look at the bounce rate. Maybe your emails are bouncing and the clients or the prospects are not even seeing your email. Maybe it's your copy, right? There's so much that goes into it as well. So you always want to keep testing and keep redefining. Now, if you have a business and you want on a hyper targeted outbound system for you where we're able to send thousands of cold emails every single day, which we do currently on our behalf and on our clients' behalf. I'll go ahead and put the link down below so you can go ahead and book a call and see if it would be a good fit. Now, if you're interested in getting started with cold email or getting started with an agency, I do drop more educational content on my Instagram, so I'll go ahead and link that down in the description below as well. So those are the 5 things to validate when it comes to picking a niche and the 3 mistakes that I see a lot of people making. If you found this video useful at all, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed, leave a comment down below. I'll make sure I get back to you. I do post cold email content weekly, and if you have any additional questions, you could always DM me on my Instagram. Like I said, I'll drop that in the description below. But thank you. I appreciate you for watching. Until next time.